I'm Bhavin Visavadia, and I'm the Royal College of Surgeons Council Lead for Mentoring. And I'm delighted to introduce you today to a landmark event in the college's calendar. Today, we're officially launching the mentoring platform, and we've got a webinar today with three speakers who are going to talk about the mentor's perspective. The platform actually launched on the 16th of January, and if I could go to the next slide, please. Three key members who are going to be presenting today are Nicola Rowe, who is the Royal College of Surgeons Director of Membership, who has knowledge of the platform and how to use it and all the links. Followed by Nicola will be Evelyn Ong, who is the Deputy Chair of the Women in Surgery Group, and will be giving her perspective as well. And then there's Sujatha Udeshankar, who is the SAS Forum Chair. So I would like to welcome you all today, and it's with great pleasure that I introduce Nicola and ask her to give her presentation. Thank you, Nicola.
Good evening, everyone. I'm delighted to be here to tell you a little bit more about what the college has been doing in the sphere of mentoring. First of all, maybe just a little bit of context. So next slide, please. So the RCS mentoring journey started really when we conducted what is known as the Kennedy Review back in 2021. And the importance of mentoring was highlighted in that report by Baroness Helena Kennedy, particularly in the context of the demise of the firm structure. And mentoring was seen as something that could create that sense of belonging, provide guidance and support at career transition points, and also be particularly beneficial for underrepresented groups. And there was a recommendation that the college take that forward and put mentoring at the heart of our member offer. So what we've been doing is developing a suite of mentoring resources. So I just want to talk you through what we've got and then tell you a little bit more about the platform, which Bhavin referred to earlier. So next slide, please. So in terms of the mentoring toolkit, so and I should say actually that all these resources will also be accessible through the platform. But just to give you a little sense of what some of the resources that are there. So there's a good practice guide to mentoring, which if you haven't already read it, I would thoroughly recommend. It's got some really useful hints and tips in there around mentoring. When we were putting together the resources, one of the pieces of feedback we consistently had was that people were sometimes a little bit nervous about signing up to mentoring because it felt like perhaps they were signing up to a lifetime commitment. So we have a template contract for mentors and mentees just to help establish the relationship. And I'm sure our other speakers will probably touch on things like that. And also a really helpful checklist when you're embarking on this mentoring journey. And then also just to draw your attention to 5 e-learning modules, which we have created, which offer 4 CPD points on completion. And as the name suggests, it's a really useful foundation for the mentoring process. And it looks at things from both the mentor and the mentee perspective. So we thoroughly recommend that people complete those modules before embarking on the program. So that's just a flavor of some of the resources that we've been working on. And then as Bhavin said, fantastic news, because we've been working on it behind the scenes for a long time. On the 16th of January, we launched our online mentoring platform. Next slide, please. So the initial pilot programs will be for women in surgery and SAS surgeons. But I should say, these are pilots, and our absolute aim is to broaden the cohorts that will be able to take advantage as mentees on the platform. So obviously, in the meantime, we're focusing on those particular groups. The programs are available exclusively for those RCS members who have completed their MRCS Part B. We're currently recruiting for mentors. It's really important that we build up that critical mass of mentors, so that once we open to mentee registrations, there will be sufficient mentors there, so that people can find their mentor matches and start their mentoring journey. And I'm delighted to say that we already have 216 people registered on the site and 108 completed mentor profiles. And considering that we haven't even been launched a month yet, we're delighted with that take up. So anyone who is joining the webinar tonight that has signed up as a mentor, thank you very much. We are thrilled. And actually, the screen grab you can see on the right-hand side of the slide is just the it's just a little screen grab of what you see when you go onto the platform, the sort of the homepage, if you like. So just briefly and finally, a few pointers on what happens when you get onto the site and how it will work. So once you go onto that homepage that was on the previous slide, you then register for an account, and this is mentor and or mentee. And once you've registered, you then go on to complete a profile. And that profile involves talking about skills and experience, areas that you can either provide support and guidance in, or areas that you're looking for help and support. As far as mentees are concerned, once the profile is approved, mentees can go on, look at suggested mentors, send a mentoring request, and even have initial conversations before committing. And the actual mentoring sessions, if you choose to do them online, are all done via the platform. But obviously people can choose whatever format works best for them. And as I mentioned earlier, the platform acts as a great repository for lots of other tools and resources. So I gave you a flavor earlier, but there are lots of others that you can find and are really helpful in terms of, you know, if you want to set goals or track progress. And the platform itself also gives useful little prompts along the way in terms of, you know, helping arranging meetings, the timings and all those kind of things. So it's a really user-friendly platform. So that just gives you a little flavor. I think at the end of the session, when all the speakers have spoken, there'll be time for questions. So if anyone has any specific questions about the platform, I will be very happy to answer them. The QR code there, or the link will take you right through to the platform. But in the meantime, thanks very much, and look forward to answering any questions a bit later.
Nicola, thank you so much for that presentation. And it really just shows the hard work that's gone on within the Royal College of Surgeons, within your department, and also the people who've helped with the platform. So there's resources there, there's some further CPD, and then there's the platform as well. So do get involved. That QR code is important because the chat may not be accessible if those of you are watching after the event's taken place on a recorded version of this. But look at that, and look at the RCS website as well. Also, if you follow the chat at the moment, there's details on how you can register as a mentor as well. So following on from Nicola, I'm delighted to have Evelyn Ong, who's our Deputy Chair of Women in Surgery Forum, and she's a clinical director and paediatric surgeon, to give her perspective as a mentor. Thank you, Evelyn.
Thank you very much, Bhavin, for that kind introduction. Next slide, please. So we have to ask ourselves, why do we want a mentorship platform? Well, mentorship is not new for women in surgery, certainly. In 2014, ASCIT actually published a paper saying, declaring the need for mentorship and support, particularly for surgical trainees. But also we recognise that consultants also would benefit from peer mentoring or reverse mentoring. In this age of surgery, the one thing that I would say is that we very seldom set any time aside for us to reflect on our own practice. And mentorship is a really good space to do that. It allows you time to think about how you're going to develop your own skills, your performance, thinking through what challenges you're facing and how to resolve them. And doing it with somebody who's able to reflect back some of those thoughts in discussions or questions, which is really valuable to us as professionals. Next slide, please. Very traditionally, it was mentioned before, the typical old-fashioned firm led by a senior consultant, and surgery is still a team sport. But a lot of that traditional, old-fashioned informal mentorship really revolved around role modelling, where you would have junior colleagues looking to their senior colleagues or consultants to try and help them decide what their path in their career was going to be. And the agenda was often driven by the recommendations that came from your senior colleagues. Now, that isn't what good formal mentorship is these days. We look to the mentee to set their goals and set the agenda and set the pace of discussions. So really, a lot of the onus is on the mentee to drive that agenda through mentorship. Our role as a mentor is really to encourage them to think about their difficulties, their decision-making, sometimes through reflecting back some of the things they say, sometimes it's through guided questioning. But what it boils down to is that the relationship is important. Next slide, please. So in terms of mentoring program challenges, we've all been there. We tried to set up a mentoring program for the British Association of Paediatric Surgeons. This is the second time that we're trying to set up a mentorship program within WINS. And the traditional program really had us setting up a directory of consultants that allowed colleagues to find a mentor for themselves and really have the courage to reach out to them and ask them for their availability and their willingness to be a mentor. We also found it quite difficult to keep to an agenda because we all get sidetracked by our day jobs and our family lives. And sometimes it's difficult to really set a goal and keep to that if it's not written down in some way, shape or form. And obviously as mentors, we never got any feedback because the only kind of feedback you got really was from the mentee. And sometimes that feedback wasn't forthcoming or it wasn't complete. And we never really, at the end of the day, got to see what the impact of that mentorship was. And this is where we're trying to make a difference with the RCS England mentoring platform. Not unlike certain dating platforms, there is a matching algorithm. So it is based on the registration details that you provide as a mentor and the registration details of the mentee to try and find a good match, trying to make sure that you mesh both in terms of what your ability and your knowledge is, and also sometimes it's on very basic things like maybe even gender or background. It is those intangibles sometimes that make the good foundation for a good working relationship. When you use a platform, it allows the mentee to define the objectives in a written form and to schedule meetings, and actually keeps prompting them to continue those meetings and to keep that momentum going so that the relationship doesn't wither on the vine when we're all distracted by other things. We can push out feedback forms for all users, and it allows us to develop programs in the mentorship platform. And also it allows us to develop you as better mentors as time goes on. One of the projects that we have in WINS is really about making sure that we keep our members engaged and we keep our surgeons in surgery. And so part of the metrics that we can actually take out of such a platform would include checking how well you're using the platform, and also what the outcomes might be. For instance, are more surgeons staying within surgery careers? Next slide, please. So what makes for a good mentor-mentee relationship? What are the key points? Well, like any good team, it requires you to define a common goal and make sure that you communicate both effectively and regularly. We don't mandate that people meet online or in person. That environment is entirely up to the mentor and the mentee, whatever is safe and whatever feels supportive and private. It is important to set expectations from the outset. Some of that will come in the registration. For instance, you can say, how often will you be available? You can set how many mentees you're willing to support or able to support. And you can set expectations about what kind of expertise you bring to the table. Provide constructive feedback. Keep mentees engaged. And likewise, they should provide constructive feedback to you about your abilities as a mentor. Instead of taking the old-fashioned model of merely telling people what to do, it's really more about the program being driven by the mentee, encouraging them to think about what their choices are and what fits them. And above all, we all do need to be quite flexible around the program. It doesn't always work well. We always get called into theatre or an emergency, whatever. But it's important to let each other know, keep communicating. If you can't make a meeting, do communicate back. Next slide, please. So why be a mentor? Well, if you go onto the e-learning module, which we really encourage all our signed up mentors to do, you will see that there's a really good video by one of our council members about what it means to her to be a mentor. Really, it's about giving back. For a lot of us, it allows us to encourage our colleagues to grow, to become self-sufficient, to be happy in their posts. And you all know that we all need a little bit of that in our lives. You get to guide surgeons through different stages of their career. And at the same time, that enhances your own professional development, your communication skills, your ability to stand back and assess situations and also learn from your mentee. Your mentee may highlight some issues that perhaps you might have in your own workplace and you may want to address. So it's an exchange of knowledge. It's a transfer of knowledge, both between the mentor and the mentee, as well as you standing in your stead as an educator. It does give you a fresh perspective on life, and it highlights things that you might want to do how to develop yourself in future. But at the end of the day, there is potential that with all this transfer of knowledge, this encouragement, this networking, and this positive growth and development in surgeons, that we hope to potentially improve patient outcomes. Next slide, please. As I say, if there's any questions, we'll be taking questions at the end. Thank you.
Evelyn, thank you for really setting the scene and for a really stimulating presentation. It's you highlighted how having the scene set and having the time to reflect are just so important in a trainee's life and also in a trainer's life, and bridging the mentor-mentee conversation all the way through to the end where actually you can learn from each other. So I think that's a really excellent presentation. Thank you for that. I do encourage you to put questions in the chat so that we can have more of a discussion at the end. But I'm going to move on to our next speaker now, who is Sujatha Udayshankar, who is the chair of the SAS Forum at the Royal College of Surgeons, and is also a trained coach and mentor. So Sujatha, thank you for taking the time to present today and to contribute. Thank you.
Thank you, Bhavin, for introducing. And hello, everyone. Today, I'm going to be talking on the mentor's perspective. I think Nicola has given a good idea about what we are introducing with the Royal College of Surgeons, and Evelyn has further developed that in terms of how it is useful for us as surgeons. So going into a bit of my own introduction, I started my career as a trainee, went through the foundation training and core training, and at one point I decided to take up a LED position, and then actively took up a specialty doctor role and stayed there as a SAS doctor. And during these years, I've also had the opportunity to actually get trained and qualify as a level 5 coach and mentor through Institute of Leadership and Management. I'm currently the chair of the SAS Forum at the college as well. And today my focus is primarily on how our careers change, and as surgeons, whether you are a trainee, a LED doctor or a SAS doctor or a higher trainee or consultant, we are constantly changing and evolving, and at different points in our career, we do feel the support and the advice we get from our role models, and that shapes our careers in surgery. So for me, this is an interesting area, and I wanted to share a few thoughts with everyone today. Next slide, please. So there's a saying where it says, life begins at the end of your comfort zone. Or obviously, we're constantly trying to push our comfort zones, push our aspirations to develop ourselves as surgeons in the current pressures the NHS has. And we all benefit from having that role model or mentor who can guide us through these challenging times. However, with mentoring and coaching, which I've mentioned over here, what I find is there is a close relationship, and they are essentially trying to do the same thing in a different format with different names. And I'm not going to give you any definitions, but the idea of this two terminologies is to help people find their strengths, help people to find their potential and develop themselves and grow into an area that they would like to grow into. And what happens with mentoring is you have a very senior, experienced role model or a surgeon who guides you through your career journey. And coaching could be something that happens interimly in between, where someone can take you through the steps to achieve a small goal in a shorter period of time. So essentially, one is a long-term relationship, and the other one is a short-term and clearly focused to a specific outcome. And in my experience with helping people, I've realized that we kind of move between these two very often without realizing sometimes. And that's why I wanted to put that in there. And one of the other clarities we need to essentially have is there are other modes of helping people, especially if they are having a challenging situation. And that would mean that they might need to focus more on training or teaching rather than mentoring or coaching, or they might need counseling, they might need some other sort of help, and also identifying those aspects within your mentee and they're having the ability to deal with it is quite resourceful. So I'm just giving you different aspects that a mentee could potentially come to you with. And as the mentor, sometimes we have to identify that and try to step back and just signpost them to what they need. So next slide, please. Qualities of the mentor. I guess we all have our role models, and I would really want to just put a question out there for all the attendees. What was your idea, or what was the best quality you saw in your ideal role model or mentor? If you want to put something in the chat, that would be useful. But I guess every one of us have mentors or role models that we've seen and learned and been inspired from. With a mentoring relationship, we believe on the trust that we place on the mentor, the comfortable conversation that you can have with them. And there are lots of qualities that can be listed, and some of them that I've put about the mentor themselves is being honest, open, flexible, trustworthy, and non-judgmental. So you can actually say what you want to be discussing in a very safe environment. Sometimes there are situations where people want a safe space, which comes back to what Evelyn just mentioned. Try not to do this try not to do the mentoring whilst you are in the middle of cases or in theaters, because that doesn't give you the space or the time or the comfortable environment to talk through things. Obviously, I can see supporting and encouraging to, yeah, and most of the other aspects that come to mentors is to maintain those critical psychological safe space and invest into the mentee's development and the ability to also put that gentle challenge so that the mentee can reflect and push themselves forwards. Some of the aspects which gets covered in this platform is also about the confidentiality of the information that's being discussed. And sometimes it's about talking to our own peers. So when we are mentors, obviously we deal with different situations, and the ability to talk to your peer mentors and see how they deal with different situations would be very much eye-opening. So that's some of the qualities that I would focus on when you are trying to become a mentor. The next slide, please. So I've been a coach and a mentor for last 2 years after having formally qualified with ILM, and during these times I've had a few reflections, and I've always learned from my mentees and coaches, and that is something that was very, very useful and enjoyable. In some cases, we think that we are giving our piece of information or our experience, but sometimes we get to learn the new experiences, especially when we see a totally new generation coming ahead of us, and understanding their perspectives. That gives a lot of joy to me. It kind of makes me think in so many different ways. And when they succeed, obviously the joy that comes along with their success is also unmeasurable. One of the tips I would give is to have your own reflective log, because that is something that makes you learn. So after each of the conversations with the mentee, having a reflection of how the session went or how the conversation went, what was new about it, what was challenging about it, and how to deal with it, and trying to think all of this through our own reflection prepares me for the next conversation or even the next mentee for that matter. And it also focuses on our own weaknesses and strengths so we can be more prepared for helping others. So that was my learning. That it's always been a win-win situation, because in their successes we find our own development and happiness. So if we can go to the next slide. Thank you. So from my perspective, being a SAS surgeon, having gone through a training pathway and then going into a LED position to becoming a SAS doctor, I've seen different challenges at different points. And I think we've already covered about having a mentor for a training pathway, but I think we all need mentors, especially in the SAS and LED surgical careers. And there are multiple points where we have that need to have a mentor who can guide us, where they can help us develop our niche areas. So just to give you a few examples of how mentoring can help within the SAS pathway, I would focus on career transitions. So if you were coming from a training pathway into a SAS post or a LED post, or becoming a specialty doctor to a specialist, or taking up the new portfolio pathway, which is enormous process to becoming a consultant through the route of SAS career pathway. Sometimes SAS doctors do decide not to go through that pathway, but they do have to develop themselves in clinical and surgical areas and have a portfolio maintenance. And that could be an area for discussion and mentorship. Most of the SAS and LED doctors come from a IMG background, and they also need support and guidance with entering to the UK healthcare system and how to practice and how to develop themselves in the UK system. some people do have special interest areas, either in a clinical subspecialty kind of special interest or non-clinical aspects, which is like developing yourself as an educator, developing yourself as a academic or in a research pathway, sometimes going through leadership and management roles and finding your feet in those roles is challenging. Some of the other areas, I know Evelyn has touched on women in surgery. We do have lots of women who've taken the SAS roles within surgery, and sometimes their challenges are easily supported when they have a clear role model and a mentor who can guide them through their career pathways. Some other areas for SAS surgeons would be work-life balance and well-being on their jobs, and support systems when they come back from maternity or paternity leaves. So these are some of these areas, and what we would really want to see is when the mentorship program starts and mentees are able to access the service. We want to develop a portfolio of themes and create some more support system on particular areas if that helps. So we would encourage all of the mentors to be well guided and supported to support SAS and training surgeons. I think, next slide, please. Thank you. I'm happy to take any questions if there was anything coming along. Thank you.
Thank you, Sujatha, for that excellent presentation and for setting the scene for mentorship and support for the SAS forum and the SAS grades. So I would love to introduce or bring back all of our speakers again so that we can have our Q&A session. If you do have questions, please put it in the chat, and we're picking them off as we go along. So we've got Nicola, Evelyn, and Sujatha. If I could just go down some of the questions. The first one, can you be both a mentor and a mentee on the platform?
Shall I take that one? Yeah. You absolutely can. You do currently need to fill in a profile both for mentor and mentee, but you can be both. Yes.
Okay. And if someone is outside of the UK, but yet they're a key instructor or work with the college, can they be a mentor?
So at the moment, the pilot programs are open to those fellows and members who are resident and working in the UK. But at some point in the future, we may well look to broaden that out. But currently, you have to be based in the UK.
Okay, thank you. Now, Sujatha, you talked a bit about training and qualifications. Are there any, so we've got our own internal training, but did you find that having your coaching qualification helped you?
I guess it did help. To be honest, it's a 1-year full-on course which is followed by a portfolio submission. So it is more intense, and that gives an in-depth understanding of the psychological factors involved, different mechanisms, and for me, that gives the confidence in what I'm doing. Whereas the mentoring platform introduces and builds that initial discussions, and I think that is a good resource to start with. But if somebody is truly committed and wants to be able to have that in-depth thinking and analysis, I think for formal qualification would be something that they can look into, but it does take a lot of time. And I'll be honest, it does involve a bit more understanding and involvement and reflection. And this is one of the things that I said, reflecting helps, but there is a lot of reflection, I would be honest about that.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. I'm going to just come back to you, Nicola, because there's just another question about how long is the mentorship program?
Well, that comes back to, I think, a point that Evelyn raised in terms of, so when the mentor and the mentee are discussing kind of the potential mentoring relationship, that's part of the program and the journey that you want to go on. That's part of setting the goals. So there's no defined program as such, but it's down to the mentor and the mentee to agree that. And when that particular relationship comes to an end, based on those agreed goals, then that essentially for the mentor is the end of that particular program.
Okay. Evelyn, if I could come to you about just sort of setting the scene and developing rapport. How do you, what advice would you give to anyone who's starting off on the mentorship route?
I think the important thing is just to be your authentic self when you meet up with your mentee. Ask lots of questions about what they hope to get out of their mentoring program. How is it that they want help? And then proceed from there. So really make it all about them. It can mean that first meeting is quite a long one because you do want to establish the framework for what your goal is, how long is that going to take, how often would you like to meet, etc., etc. Now, the one thing I would say is don't be offended if somebody goes, well, actually, I think I need a different mentor. It is really important for both mentor and mentee to feel comfortable. And sometimes as a mentor, you might not feel entirely comfortable with your mentee. It is important for both of you to be open and honest about what you are trying to achieve. And it's only if you do that, then you can actually establish that rapport. I think mentees that previously been with me as their mentor have often cited similar backgrounds as being part of why they wanted me to be their mentor, whether that's because they come from a racial minority or they're women who want to go into a niche specialty such as pediatric transplant surgery. You know, there's a lot of things that a lot of mentees will look for that they have in common with their mentor. And some of those will not be in your registration form. So just be aware of that. That's all. I think that's a good starting point, really, that first meeting.
No, thank you so much. I'll come back to that. But Nicola, there's a question about retired members, and can retired members be mentors?
I mean, we'll certainly look to that because we feel that the experience is very valuable, and that's actually something that came up very recently when we were discussing with one of the main standing committees within the college. And although currently it says you must be working in the UK, I think there is real grounds for, there's so much experience out there. So that is something that we're currently looking at broadening out. So because I just think there's a lot of experience there. And ultimately, as part of the completed profile, you know, you state kind of where you are in your career. And so the matching algorithm will match people. So if you particularly want someone who is earlier on in their career as a mentor, then the algorithm will work that out for you. But we're looking at broadening that out to include retired people because we believe there's a lot that they can offer.
Okay, so I hope that answered that question that we're looking at that. And also members outside the UK, we've said no, is that?
That's correct. Yes, currently.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Fine. The mentors themselves, is there an opportunity for them to reflect in their own peers? So to have their own peer support and even supervision support?
Yeah, so we're looking at opportunities to bring mentors together so that there's the ability to network with fellow mentors. Whether that, I don't think that would be currently in a formal supervised way, but the feedback that we've had in putting the program together is that those forums and opportunities for people to come together just to share experiences are really valuable. So we'll be looking to facilitate that through the college for the mentors that we have signed up.
Great, excellent. Coming back to you, Evelyn, again, it was the about taking the time to set up a session. How long would you allow for that first session? Because we're all busy surgeons, but how do you distinguish a session or time for that? How much time do you need?
So from experience, it depends a little bit on what your mentee is asking for. So earlier somebody asked about how long a mentorship program lasts. We've had mentees who really just want to get past their exam, for instance. So that's a defined time point, you hope, and relatively short. Whereas if you're talking to somebody about perhaps career progression, that's a longer conversation. And I'd probably allow at least an hour and a half.
Okay. Sujatha, for your point of view, what do you think in terms of how long, how many sessions, and if people want more sessions?
I would agree with Evelyn. I think it's mentee driven, and but one word of caution or wariness is that if the mentee is unable to make that decision, and sometimes we do find we go in circles. At some point, I've seen that I have to come in and say, we've gone through this, and is this what you wanted? And do you want to go for a short break, find out what you want, and come back if you do still need the piece of advice or something to discuss? And it allows the mentee to realize what they want to do and give them the piece of time and trying to explore, understand what their needs are, and come back to us, so that it's not a vicious cycle where they are not able to make the decision, is the mentoring relationship finished or not finished yet. So that's something that does happen, not so often, but again, as a mentor, having that ability to identify and have a smooth and nice conversation with the mentee so that it's not challenging for them is crucial.
Okay, thank you, Sujatha. Nicola, just to clarify again, there's another question. Who qualifies for being a mentee? Any RCS England member or fellow, whether in the UK or abroad?
So if you have passed your Part B, you are eligible to be a mentor or a mentee, but for both, you must currently be working in the UK.
Okay, so you've got to be working in the UK and have passed Part B. Yeah. Okay. With the two groups that have been chosen and are starting the schemes, Women in Surgery and the SAS grades, how long do we need at the college to evaluate the program before we roll out?
So I think it's a really good question. And you know, I'll be honest that as the college with the development of the platform, we are sort of going on this journey, albeit an exciting one, because clearly there is a demand for it. The reason we picked those two particular cohorts are for sort of reasons that have been drawn out, I think, by both our other speakers, in terms of those groups where it's been found to be particularly beneficial. we will be getting various metrics and data through the platform that will enable us to sort of evaluate the success. Clearly, the most important thing at this point is that we get sufficient number of mentors, and then we will see, once we open it to mentee registrations, the numbers and managing that, because the most important thing is that everyone on the platform, mentor or mentee, has a good mentoring experience. So we will be evaluating at the 6 month point once we open to mentees, and then at a 12-month point. But as I mentioned earlier, what we want to do along the way is provide support for our mentors. We'll be gaining feedback. There are actually questionnaires that are disseminated through the platform that will help us gather that information. So it's going to be a constant evaluation, essentially, but formally sort of at a 6 month point after we've opened for mentee registrations, and then 12 months after that.
Thank you. Evelyn, with mentees, have you had experience of group mentoring? And what do you think about the benefits of mentoring in a group compared to an individual? I know that we may not be going down that route at the moment, but it's certainly something that's done quite often.
Yes, I mean, group mentoring is, again, it's something that really, because it's a group, there has to be an agreed goal that the entire group signs up for. My experience of it really is that it just highlights who wants to go on for further one-to-one mentoring, because you often find that it's not the group may need coaching. That's an entirely different matter. And I think that's what most people actually will get the most out of in a group setting, is actually coaching. But a good coach will identify individuals who perhaps need further one-to-one mentoring.
Thank you. If I could put the same question to you, Sujatha. Group mentoring versus individual mentoring.
I think the answer lies in what mentoring and coaching offers. So coaching offers something, a very focused, clear outcome and in a short term. So that is something that, let's say for training, you could teach and train surgical skills to 10 of your foundation doctors, but then coach them to how to develop it finessely, and that would be a a coaching kind of skill, which Evelyn pointed out to. But then how do they further their skills? Some might want to do a particular skill, some might want to do something else, some might want to consider how do I further my surgical career through either a training pathway or an SAS pathway, or by doing a fellowship. And at that point, when you come to mentoring, everybody's needs differ and the goals might not actually match. So I would agree with what she said. Coaching could be a group coaching and you identify different needs. And then when it comes to mentoring, it again falls back to individualized needs. I would be surprised if you had an entire group who wanted the same sort of a goal over a long-term period.
Yeah, great.
Having said that, just one last comment about group mentoring. So the one setting that group mentoring is really useful for is when you are trying to reach a strategic plan for a group of surgeons. So it's a useful tool when you're doing away days, for instance. You might have a mentor that asks a series of questions to allow people to actually identify what their common goals are, what they want to achieve in 1 year, 5 year, 10 years. So that's a very classic setting for group mentoring. But the majority of times when you're problem solving, actually it falls back to group coaching.
Great. Thank you. Very well answered. Thank you, both of you. So back to the messages in the chat. It says that the platform appears to be for mentors. Where do mentees go to the platform to find a mentor? Nicola, back to you.
So the platform is for both mentors and mentees. It's just that at the moment it's open for mentor registration so that we can build up that critical mass. and we'll be opening for mentee registrations in early March. So same link, same place, early March.
Okay, I'll just, there's one other, if there's a mentor-mentee relationship previously, could you take that to the platform? I guess both would have to be registered in agreement.
Yeah, I mean, if both parties were happy to register on the platform and met the eligibility criteria, there's no reason why that relationship couldn't be then sort of managed through the platform.
Okay, and then is the college going to organise workshops for training programs for mentors?
Yeah, I mean, it's really interesting, and the questions are already providing really helpful feedback for us as the college, because that there definitely seems to be you know, a desire to have that support for mentors. So we will certainly take that away. As I said earlier, we really do want to provide the best experience for mentees and mentors. So that's certainly something that we will look at, yes, in terms of, as well as the sort of the networks for mentors to talk to each other, whether or not you know, we can host some sort of more formal training as well.
Evelyn, I'm going to come back to you from the mentee's perspective. What are the most important questions to ask your mentor during the first meeting in order to get the most out of your mentorship?
I think, Lucy, you are in the driving seat as far as the mentor-mentee relationship is concerned. So you're the one that sets out what you want to do. What are you trying to achieve? And the main question really to your mentor is, are you able to help me down this journey? Now, they may say that actually I don't have expertise or experience in that field, and maybe I'm not the best mentor for you. We hope that with the matching algorithm, provided enough people enter enough information about what they are offering, that this is unlikely to happen. But just like dating websites, it's not going to be a perfect hit every time. Other things that you might want to ask is, how much time do you think you can offer me? How often can you meet? How would you like to meet? Would you like to meet in face-to-face, or would you prefer to have somebody that had the expertise but perhaps didn't live in the same city as you? Then it leaves you with video calls. So really, it's about deciding for yourself, how would you like to work? How long would you like that relationship to run for? And asking if they're going to be able to invest that time in you, and whether they're the right person, the right fit.
Brilliant, thank you. Sujatha, could I ask you the same question? I mean, you may have a different cohort of mentees coming your way, but it's how do you make the most out of the sessions? What are the most important questions that the mentee could ask you as the mentor?
I think the first session is almost like a rapport building and contracting between the mentor and the mentee. I think we've got a few questions that Evelyn has already mentioned. One of the things that I will also add is having those plans in place. So once you know whether you're going to meet face-to-face, online, what times, how long, what happens if something has to be cancelled? What do I do then? How do I communicate that to you and rearrange things? How soon can we meet? And what if there was something that I wanted to discuss quickly? What is the best way to communicate that to you? Is it going to be an email? Is it going to be a WhatsApp? Is it going to be just dropping in your office? Things like that, so that it's not a surprise that you've suddenly called somebody on their phone and it's like, have you agreed? Have you told them and said, I might call you for this sudden introduction? And then sometimes it's nice to actually put your goals forward, and that gives the room to refine what is it that you're looking for in this mentoring relationship, and see what your mentor perspective is. And it also gives your mentor the idea of what the mentee is looking for and prepare for those future sessions. It might be that on the first session, I don't know what my mentee wants, and I'm just coming there to explore.
Yeah.
I don't have many ideas to give. But on the second session, I'll be more prepared because I know what they want. And I'll come prepared for that to say, where are you? What are we doing? Have you tried this? So I think giving that honest idea of what you're looking for in the relationship, wanting out of it, is a key thing after you've set up that all contracting basics.
Thank you so much. Nicola, just finally, because we're coming to the end of our webinar, is just, do you think the checklists and templates in our resources will be useful?
Absolutely, yes. I think definitely, because it provides that, particularly if people are sort of coming to this a little bit unsure. I think they just provide some really helpful guidance and structure when you start on that mentoring journey.
Brilliant. And on that note, I mean, we're now 7:30. I'd like to thank all of our speakers who contributed today and for this really landmark forum for our launching our mentorship platform. You've heard about our resources, you've heard about the toolkits, you've heard about the platform itself, a little bit of training online as well. And then you've heard from Mentors in Action, Evelyn, who looks after our Women in Surgery, and Sujatha, who looks after our SAS grades. There's a lot of work to do in this direction, and I'm helping to lead this at College Council as well. And I'm really grateful to everyone for their contributions. Also to all the staff in our outreach team, so Helen, Jane, and everyone at the college who helps to support the webinars, and Antonia, who has helped to run it as well. Thank you very much. There's a list of our webinars coming up as well, so look at the QR codes. And if you're looking at the this after the event, it's the QR code is the only way to get further information. But just email us at the college as well. So thank you very much, and have a good evening.